What's up, everybody? I'm actually in my warehouse office right now. I was unable to do the show. I'm here a lot longer than anticipated. There's some construction that we're having being done in the main sort of warehouse area right now, and I'm here a lot longer than anticipated. But my guy on my team said I should probably do this video just to at least touch base with y'all, and then we'll go more into details about it on the show. But obviously, you see that many garden tools, as well as the allies of said garden tools, are very frustrated right now. And they are upset because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Now, I talked about this before and how, unfortunately, you cannot stop people from being stupid. There are people that are dumb that are actually believing that this means that basically abortion would be illegal across all states because they're dumb. When all basically that it means is that, well, now it's left up to the states in terms of determining whether or not abortion or what the stance, let's say, of that particular state is going to be. That is an active form of decentralization. I made this point for people that follow me on Twitter before, and that's the reason that I would welcome it. Certainly because it's, instead of a one-size-fits-all applying it to this large territory such as the United States, instead it's only applying to, or rather it would be those individual areas determining what that rule, let's say, is going to be. Now, my thing here, in addition to just the stupid people being stupid and the meltdowns that were going to, of course, ensue, I want to remind you of something, because there's so many of y'all that are going to, of course, point out the hypocrisy of the leftists. You've seen blue check marks. You've even seen people that are serving in power that are basically wanting to undermine the Supreme Court. Some calling for all sorts of things, for saying very questionable things. And your beloved Orange Man was impeached for a lot less. Now, we can sit here all day and talk about how that makes them hypocrites. Of course, they're hypocrites. But the point, or rather what I want you to learn from it, is they know that. They're hypocrites and they don't care. If anything, you should have learned that by the summer of love in 2020, when you saw these people just completely going back on the positions that they had on the whole COVID thing. And they would link up in crowds and march after they had just told you that you were killing grandmas in the event that you did the same. Especially if it was for a political rally for someone that they themselves didn't support. And that's what you guys have to understand. I always use that analogy of, it's like entering a boxing match with a guy that you know is crooked. There's a person that you know is going to low blow you, but it's not just that. They bought off the refs. They bought off the judges, and you're going to try to enter that fight honestly. And you're making a grave mistake there by treating them as if they share the same set of morals and ethics. See, the leftists in America, they particularly look at the state. By state, I'm just saying a territorial monopoly on use of force, violence, and ultimate decision making. So I'm speaking about virtually everything there, not just the state per se, not everything, but you get what I'm saying. The federal government, of course, also applies when I'm using this term. But they just use that as a vehicle. It's a vehicle to, of course, advocate what they want, get their let's say ideals out there, push their ideals, and more importantly, punish their ideological enemies. So in this case, it seems like they didn't get their way, and they're, of course, frustrated. And now it's okay, of course, to undermine this institution, even though they would have called you an insurrectionist and all sorts of things. Let's say if the Supreme Court ruled in a different way, they would call you all sorts of names. They know that stuff, and pointing out that hypocrisy only matters to those that already agree with you. It also matters maybe to people that are maybe slightly already largely agree with you, maybe don't identify with you as far as where you are on a political alignment. But regardless, it doesn't work on them. So you have to sort of keep this in mind. Now, another thing that I want to say about this is that the libertarian position, it's quite crazy that I've seen people, because I'm a libertarian, they look at it like, well, the issue is as black and white, as in libertarians should be for people making their own choices. And that goes to show that a lot of people don't know what libertarianism is. And that includes the leftists that call themselves modern libertarianism. Forget the etymology of it all. In the American sense, you know what it, yeah, you should know what it means. But you saw that there was a recent influx of like old Bernie Sanders supporters and old leftists who had tried to take the term back, as they would like to think. And to them, it means more hedonism. It means more libertinism and not actual libertarianism. And libertarianism is more of a philosophy that is centered around the core principle is of property rights. And that starts with self-ownership. This is why we uphold, like you see people talk about the axiom, or rather the principle of non-aggression. And what that means is that obviously you don't have a right to aggress upon another individual. And that, of course, embodies the number one core private property right in self-ownership. So when people act like it's black and white as well, you should, let me say, I guess a woman, or what I saw someone call them gender diverse, as they call them as well, groups. They said that, well, it's their decision, and as a libertarian, you should support that. Not seeming to understand that that child that's in that womb also has a body themselves. So you should, if anything, expect there to be, I'll admit that it may not be, or rather it's a lot grayer than other issues, but to act like it's just straight black and white, and that it's absurd for a libertarian to, let's say, consider themselves pro-life, shows that you don't know much about libertarianism in terms of what it actually is, certainly in regards to the private property rights and what that embodies, So obviously some of the most staunchest, like most important libertarian thinkers do tend to be pro-life, and it does stem often, some of it's religious, but a lot of it stems from, which is why you get even non-religious people, of course, that looking at that person in that womb as an actual person, and therefore you don't have the right to, let's say, aggress upon them. And also you have to take into consideration that though I know they always like to look at cases of actual people forcing themselves on someone and then that person ending up pregnant, though that represents a very, I would argue, almost statistically insignificant group of people that tend to get these abortions from all data points. Most of them have nothing to do with that, but the vast majority of people that become pregnant are getting there by way of voluntary means. Is it maybe a unwise decision? Is it maybe a irresponsible decision? Yes, you can make that argument, and absolutely it is. But to act like it's just an accident, which is why I hate when people say that, well, now this means that in certain areas, let's say if they do ban abortion, this means that people are going to be forced to have births. It's such a weird way to word that, because it assumes that you just slip, fall, and land on another man's junk, and then you become pregnant. That's not how it works. But the people that are expected to be mad are expected to be mad, and I wanted to relay that. You should know that. But the hypocrisy thing, you should expect that when these politicians. I saw the old politician, black politician. What is her name? I don't know why I'm losing it right now. The little funny looking chick out of California that I don't think even lives in her own district. She's basically talking, just bluntly putting it, undermining, of course, the Supreme Court. Calling it illegitimate. Same thing with AOC. Was it Maxwell? That's her name. And then her last name. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank here. Someone in the chat, of course, will think of it. But this is to be expected. This is why I continue to say, and I'm going to end on this note, if you truly want to own the libs, as so many people look at, that's what it's about, you push for decentralization. I tell y'all that, as you see, it just protects the power structure if you don't push for it. So you're waiting for the Supreme Court to rule in this regards. When I look at it, like, why am I sharing a government with these weirdos? Why am I sharing a government with these folks out of California and New York? The federal government, I believe, of course, should be abolished. You can see my previous videos all talking about that, how it should be. It's archaic, and the fact that you have this institution ruling over such large bodies and demographics and culturally different, incompatible areas is complete nonsense. We just accept it as that's what it's supposed to be. But you push for decentralization if you want to own them, because they look at it like this. This is their power structure. And if they want to whip you into shape, The first thing that they use is the state, of course, his academics that it's pumped out to legitimize themselves in their existence. This is why the academics are some of the greatest supporters of the state, because they know if it otherwise didn't exist, they wouldn't have anything. And of course, the intellectual elites, as a lot of them will like to think of themselves as, very prominent in those. They're very necessary to keep the state existing as it should. But you see what they're really scared of. What they're scared of is decentralization. To them, it is an enemy. They would rather have a body that they're able to rule over, but only to do what they want them to do. Anything else cannot be accepted. And you see that they're showing you, it's a shining example of what happens when they don't get their way and how they act. So push for decentralization all the way. If you learn nothing else from this, if you truly want to, it ain't just about owning them. I'm just using that as an example. That's not my primary thing. I'm all about liberty. I'm all about wanting to see liberty in my lifetime, wanting to see growth, maybe for my kids at some point. I want them to be able to live in a more free, more prosperous world. And in order to do that, we know we have to combat the state. And yeah, the Supreme Court, of course, is a part of that. I said in the tweet, y'all saw that. Yeah, of course, ideally, it wouldn't be a thing. The fact that there's an institution that can set such precedent for a large body is insane in the first place. If it were up to me, that it wouldn't be a thing. But the leftists, they have no problem with the Supreme Court, so as long as they're ruling on their behalf.